From the outcome of Monday's federal by-election to the Smith government moving to power a handful of provincial jails with solar energy. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Stacey Hatcher, a communications professional who has worked for Conservative leaders in Ottawa and on Conservative leadership and election campaigns here in Alberta. And Graham Thompson is a longtime political columnist in the province. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with Pierre Poilievre securing a return to Parliament, this time representing residents of an Alberta riding.
I am grateful that I will have the chance to be their humble servant, to fight every day and in every way for the people in this region who feed, power, and protect all of Canada.
The federal Conservative leader received just over 80% of the vote in Monday's Battle River Crowfoot by-election. Independent candidate Bonnie Critchley finished a distant second with 10% support. The Alberta seat came open following the April federal election when former MP Damien Carrick stepped down so the party leader could run after losing his Ottawa area riding. Stacey, we'll start with you. An 80.4% share of the vote, just shy of Damien Carrick's finish in April. What do you make of the landslide outcome, given Pierre Poilievre faced more than 200 candidates thanks to the efforts of the longest ballot committee?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think, in this day and age with social media and all of our online chatter and diving down the rabbit hole on things, sometimes we can lose sight of what's really obvious and right in front of our face. And I think, listen, Mr. Poilievre worked hard in this riding. His staff worked hard. His wife worked hard. They were taking nothing for granted. I'm sure I saw a quote or two from him that said he was running like he was 5 votes behind. And for someone like me, I mean, I used to hear that sentence a lot in the olden days. And so it was a bit of a hearkening back. But listen, he worked hard. He deserved it. I think that one of the markers I was looking at was to see how close he would come percentage-wise to Damien Carrick's final results from the federal election. And 80% to 82.5%. He did a great job. And now he's going back to where he needs to be, which is in the House of Commons, to be able to debate against the Prime Minister and showcase his talents once again.
Graham, how does this outcome play against the growing separatist movement in the province? Are there takeaways in that regard?
Well, it's interesting, yes. The thing is, though, separation was never really a big issue in this campaign. There are people in the riding, who want to separate, no doubt, and that's an issue right now on provincial politics, really being pushed by the Premier, Danielle Smith. But it came to this actual by-election, though. It wasn't a big issue. Some were talking about it, and Pierre Poilievre had said, look, he's against separation. He called himself a Canadian patriot. Now, that did ruffle some feathers among the separatists. But, he said, look, you have grievances, legitimate grievances. I agree with, sympathize with you. It's all the federal Liberals' fault. And so that, he could deflect it. So he wasn't playing that game. And he isn't going to play the game going forward. He's not taking a separatist message to Ottawa. Obviously, he managed to diffuse that issue. But again, it's not really, to me, it's not a big issue in Alberta politics. Even provincially, most Albertans are against it. So it's more an issue where people were talking about it, especially outside of Alberta. How big will the separation issue be? I think Poilievre may get cross-threaded with Danielle Smith on some issues going down the road, because he's going to be talking to Canadians generally, not just, Albertans, and Smith can talk to just Albertans on these issues. So to me, separation wasn't a big issue. It's more of an issue provincially, but not at the federal level. I think that he managed to sidestep that landmine very adroitly.
Stacey, with the clock now ticking, Stacey, on the January leadership review, how much of a guarantee do you feel Monday's outcome stamps on Pierre Poilievre leading the party into the next federal election?
Well, I don't think he has a lot to worry about. I always hesitate being equivocal like that because, I mean, it is politics and things can change radically quickly overnight. But I think he's in a very comfortable, very secure position. There's no indication from any of his caucus of dissent. I think that, people will really feel like this is a starting point again for them and look forward to the fall in the House of Commons. I mean, just to hop back to the separatist point, the separatist candidate actually got less than 2% of the vote in this by-election. And so I think that speaks volumes as well. And Pierre is not a stranger to Alberta. Like he went to school here. He comes out here frequently. His home life and upbringing was on the prairies, and so I know that there were a number of people trying to make hay with that. How is he going to connect to this new riding after the by-election? This is a tale as old as time. It's not like Mr. Poilievre is the first fellow to run in a by-election, and so I think the larger sort of future thoughts will be around the next federal election and where does he want to run? I mean, arguably the demographic in his Ontario riding has changed. And so presumably there are strategists and pollsters on the ground checking out that demographic to see just how much it has changed and whether it still makes sense for him to run there.
Graham, the CPC has deep pockets. How much effort do you see the party putting into shoring up Pierre Poilievre's leadership ahead of the January review in Calgary?
Oh yeah, listen, it's all hands on deck to make sure he survives. Because look, if he was to be defeated in that leadership review, that's a big black mark. Of course, against him, it would force him out, but also against the party itself. And I agree with Stacey on basically everything when it comes to the caucuses behind him. They're all basically. The issue, though, for Poilievre is connecting with Canadians. So the caucus is behind him. He's still talking. He's very angry at the Liberals all the time. But the thing is, the big threat right now is Trump. So how does Poilievre play that? And if he's just seen as constantly attacking Carney, who is trying to deal with Trump, that could be a problem for him. But again, caucuses behind him. The issue, though, with Poilievre and what's happening with federal politics and Trudeau is gone, in comes Carney, is like, look, I was saying, like we're all saying like 6 months ago, that Poilievre was going to win the federal election. Goodbye, federal Liberals. You're going to be put into maybe third place. But things changed, and things have gone sideways for the CPC and Poilievre. So I'm not saying it's going to happen again, but boy, I'm being more careful when I talk about things when it comes to federal politics with Trump in the mix, making things really unsettled. And I think that could be a big issue this fall when Canadians are looking to Carney, and he's still more popular than Poilievre. Of course, that could change. But when we're dealing with this threat, external threat, how much can he put up with people attacking the prime minister inside Canada?
Okay, so Stacey, you get last word on this one, and it follows in what we just heard from Graham as Mr. Poilievre now looks to return to Parliament. Are there lessons that you expect he will need to take away from the experiences of working his way back in the wake of the federal election?
Well, I think you heard in his campaign speech in the by-election, as well as last evening's remarks, he's grateful, and I think he should lean into some of those softer emotions. I think his wife brings out those softer emotions in him as well. And I mean, if you look at the polling, he needs to pull up his numbers with the female demographic, and so one would assume that they're taking a good hard look at those pieces. I think the winning formula remains affordability, because honestly, that is an issue that hasn't changed for most Canadians. And people are still struggling to pay bills. They're struggling and making decisions about food on table and how much. And I think Pierre can lean into that very successfully. He has. And it also plays into the economic uncertainty with Trump and the trade war going on. So there's some elements he should probably keep the same.
All right. On that note, time for us to take a bit of a break. But when we come back, we'll follow up on the mayor of Red Deer and the Smith government's embrace of solar energy. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. We heard from Ken Johnston, the mayor of Red Deer, off the top on a number of topics tonight. Graham, he won't be seeking re-election when voters go to the polls in October. How much of a stamp has Ken Johnston made on Red Deer's municipal dynamic over a single term?
No, it's interesting. He's a very articulate gentleman. He's been on city council, of course, for some time. And the thing is, he was pushing issues like dealing with homelessness. He was dealing with issues in I would call it more progressive stance, more like Edmonton and Calgary in some ways. And it's interesting because he's been really pushing, for example, downtown redevelopment. looking at things differently. And you'll see that across North America. I've been doing some work on that, actually, investigating some of this, especially rural areas and even mid-sized cities like Red Deer's got 100,000 people, looking at how they can develop downtown. That's really core to these communities, to try and bring more life back into them. And that can make a huge difference for communities. And I think that Ken Johnson's actually kickstarted that process to bring more life into Red Deer by changing how they deal with economic development. He talked about that. Of course, the hospital's coming in. He talked about that, getting more life into the downtown. So that's really key. I think it's really an issue that many communities are struggling with across North America. And I think that he's actually set a path for Red Deer to actually follow and to actually bring more life, more money, more jobs into the city.
Stacey, speaking of a path to follow, what do you see weighing then on the shoulders of the next Red Deer City Council and the mayor elected to follow in Ken Johnson's footsteps?
Hopefully they're all running on this progressive platform. I mean, downtown revitalization, jobs, the economy, these are important mandates, and they're fairly universal. And so it sounds like that Mayor Johnston has kickstarted a number of these projects. So whoever is coming into the chair is likely going to assume project leadership on some of these pieces. I think the other interesting element too is the partnership with Tourism Red Deer. And so I'll put in a plug for tourism, whether Tourism Alberta, but I did a stint at Tourism Calgary, and one of the wonderful offshoots when you start to collaborate with tourism, it has this consequence of building pride in your citizens because you're putting yourself on display. You're looking hard for the gems and the nuggets. It forces you to discover your city and to be proud of certain things. And so I think, part of all of this development is also pride in space, pride in one city. And so I'm seeing a lot of, I don't want to say resurgence, but Red Deer is an important central hub, and it's in between Alberta's two major cities. There's a lot of sport that happens in Red Deer. There's a lot of outdoor and geography to sell to tourism and other Albertans who are just even traveling from within the province. And so I want to say the future looks incredibly bright for Red Deer, and I think Mayor Johnstone has put them on that path.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, one more topic for us. That's the Smith government's move to embrace solar energy. According to the Infrastructure Ministry, the province plans to incorporate solar panel installations at 5 correctional facilities in Calgary and Edmonton with an aim of saving up to $1 million a year in power costs. A procurement document published by the province puts the budget anywhere from $10 to $50 million. Stacey, what message do you see the Smith government sending here?
Well, I mean, it's a funny announcement, isn't it? Did you expect it? I think that it caught a lot of people off guard. One of my favorite quotes came from Environmental Defense on this decision, and they were happy. I mean, how often can this government boast that it's made Environmental Defense happy? So I think that's a funny little offshoot. But listen, I think, after the decision in 2023, when the government took a look at what people thought was trying to shut down the renewable sector, solar and wind in particular, and I think really what Premier Smith is demonstrating is she's not anti the renewables industry, but she wants that the renewables and the regulation to kind of find each other and be at the same level. And so I think there was a lot of growth happening in renewables, and the regulatory field just hadn't caught up. And so presumably that's happening now. And I think this is a great innovation. And it's going to save money. So as a taxpayer, I love that. So I think it's a great announcement.
Graham, how do you see this playing against the background of that 7-month moratorium on approvals of solar and wind projects 2 years ago?
Stacey is right.
And that led to restrictive new rules.
Yeah, and Stacey is right. I was surprised by this. I didn't see it coming because this government, and I'm not as optimistic as Stacey. I think that the government, has to follow that. This is where the world is moving, solar power, and it does make sense, and it can save money. It can make cheaper power, bring down the cost for power, absolutely. I'm still a bit cynical and skeptical of this government when it comes to actually embracing solar power. To me, it's a case where, and Stacey is right, there was that environmental defense spokesman who said, it's good to see somebody in the government that is thinking rationally in the Alberta government about solar power and renewable power. So maybe this is actually maybe a glimmer of hope that the government will start moving in that direction. I'm still, though, very skeptical based on that moratorium they brought in with no consultation with the stakeholders, and that's put things back in Alberta when it comes to renewable energy. Maybe we're getting back on a track. We'll wait and see.
Maybe as a last word, Stacey, how likely is this to play with the UCP base or certain elements of the UCP base?
I think they're going to brush by it. Honestly, I don't think it's going to make a mark on them whatsoever. They'll hang their hat on the financial savings, say it was a good decision. I mean, honestly, if I put on my cynical hat like Graham, what I could also say is the Smith government will point to this decision whenever they're attacked on renewables. They'll just say, "But wait, look at what I announced." And so there's my cynical hat for you, Graham.
All right. On that note, we will leave it there. Good to see you both. Thank you kindly for this.
Nice to see you
My
both.
pleasure.